Right now, Israel trying to gain control of the Gaza Strip as the war with Hamas enters a fourth day. Israel has also been increasing airstrikes in Gaza after sealing off food, fuel, and other supplies in retaliation for Hamas attacks. 6th District Representative Kathy Manning joining us now live. She was also the first woman to serve as board chair of the Jewish Federations of North America, from 2009-2012. Congresswoman, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
First off, the swift nature of these attacks and the intensity of them has to just be a tremendous concern. It shows the planning, obviously, that Hamas had going into this.
It was the worst surprise attack on the Israeli people since the 1973 surprise Yom Kippur War. And the fact that there were over 1,000 terrorists, fundamental religious terrorists who invaded Israel and went house to house in 22 different towns, killing people in their homes, taking people hostage. There was a mass slaughter of more than 270 young people who were at an all-night concert in the desert, and they were shot dead where they were standing in their cars. We've seen that they took hostages, children, babies, elderly, and Hamas is now threatening to execute the hostages on video and broadcast live the execution of these poor civilians who have been taken hostage. It is just a horrifying example of what terrorists do to civilian populations.
A number of American citizens have been killed, and we understand that a number of Americans are believed to be among the hostages. How does the U.S. government you have to be certainly hands off at this point, but it has to be very concerned about those American lives in danger?
Actually, the U.S. government is not hands-off, to the extent that the U.S. government has made it quite clear in statements from President Biden, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin. The United States stands firmly with the state of Israel and will do everything to make sure that Israel has what it needs to protect its people. And as you probably know, the United States is moving an aircraft carrier into the area. We suspect that Iran, the global state sponsor of terror, is behind this attack. This attack took extensive planning and enormous resources.
Moving a carrier group in with, we understand, around 5,000 sailors is one thing. Is this something where you would anticipate that American forces actually have boots on the ground in the combat area there?
The Israeli military has never asked us to put U.S. boots on the ground. They are an extraordinarily well-trained, dedicated, and accomplished military. They will do the work that needs to be done. They will have our backing.
What kind of latitude does the president have as far as funding for this, the initial round of funding, and then something longer term?
Well, what we would like to see is the Republican Chaos Caucus get its work done and elect a new speaker to the House. We already have in the House a resolution showing our strong support of Israel that's waiting for a new speaker so that we can get that resolution to the House floor. There are some bills that have already been drafted to make sure that Israel has additional funding for the Iron Dome system, which is their defensive missile system. That bill can't get to the House floor until the Republicans do what they need to do and elect someone Speaker of the House.
Politics aside from the speaker situation there seems to be support on both sides of the aisle for supporting the Israeli military. It doesn't seem like that's in question at all.
There's no question there is strong bipartisan support for the state of Israel. I'm the vice-ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We have been in touch with our members of the committee, and we are strongly, all of us, bipartisan in strong support of Israel. And I've been in touch with colleagues on the other side of the aisle who also have expressed their concern about what is going on, their sorrow for the Israeli people, and their determination that we in Congress should stand united in support of Israel.
Would quantify some of that support. Is it sending actual armaments over there, or advisors, or tell us what support means in this case?
Well, as you may know, the U.S. has had shared military exercises with Israel. They have shared intelligence with Israel. They have joint training. All those things will continue, but we stand ready, waiting for the Israelis to tell us what help they need.
Okay, Congresswoman Kathy Manning, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Take care.